Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Political Theater, everybody. We're doing a video show this evening. We've only got a little bit of time here this evening because tomorrow I'm going to be driving back to Ohio, so I'll be back in the studio tomorrow evening. And we'll be continuing the show as normal from there for a couple days, and then we're going to be back on the road next week. We're going to be in D.C., and then we'll be up in Jersey, and then I think I'm going out to California shortly after that. So a lot of travel coming up, guys, but we got a whole bunch to talk about. And the number one thing we want to talk about tonight is obviously the continued investigation into the NGOs that are just continuing to destroy America, and for some reason we're not doing anything about it. So tonight, the number one thing I'm going to go over, we're going to go into some of the details that we've been working on for the investigation on top of where the Somali cash, where we think it's going, why it's going where we think it's going, and we're going to talk about some of the stuff that came out today that one of the regulars on our show here and an unofficial producer for the show, Jack Tron, actually managed to find. He infiltrated one of these anti-ICE groups, and we've got some information we're going to go over on that because that was very interesting. If you guys haven't seen his thread, make sure you guys go over and check out that thread. There's a bunch of really interesting information on it, but before we get to that, we're going to go over what we're talking about for the Somali cache, because this is the most important part of the investigation we're working on here. We're trying to figure out where exactly the money's been going, why it's moving, how it's moving, what the purpose of it moving is. And I think we may have actually stumbled upon the right answer here. So one of the things that people have realized is, well, in the reports that have come out, is that they were saying that this money is moving from Amsterdam and going from Amsterdam to Dubai. And why was that happening? So we're coming out of Minneapolis with cash, going to Amsterdam, then going to Dubai. And we were trying to figure out what the purpose for that was. And we started looking at a lot at Ilhan Omar. And we were trying to figure out what exactly Ilhan Omar, we knew that she was connected to this just generally because it only makes sense. She has been somehow managing to make millions of dollars in her short tenure in Congress, and we're trying to figure out where the money's coming from. And all of this lines up on top of the fact that she has been very defensive and not really talking about this fraud pretty much at all. So we started looking a bit further into her, and we found out some pretty interesting stuff. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to go in through all of those details here on the show this evening. Before we do that, though, guys, make sure you guys leave a comment down below. This is the Political Theater. I'm Walter Kerr. Thank you guys for being here. If you guys are tuning in to us on YouTube, Rumble, Substack, wherever you guys may be turning on, if you're on X, make sure you guys share the link out. Make sure people know that we are live. Make sure you guys put a comment down below if you got something to say. I always try and read the comments. I want to hear what you guys think about the show. Make sure you guys leave me a comment there. And if you guys want to follow me, make sure you guys go to wcdispatch.com and follow me there. That's the best place you can see all of the information we're putting out on here, guys. So make sure you guys follow us on all of our different platforms. Leave comments. Tell me what you think about the show, and we're going to get right into it. So, number one thing here, we're going to talk about this link to Ilhan Omar. So I'm going to put this up here because we figured something out today that kind of led us in this direction. This is a pretty interesting link that we just found out today. So for those who don't know, Ilhan Omar, when she was in Congress back in 2019, she was the first congresswoman one of the first congresswomen in the first congressional delegation to visit Ethiopia. But the thing about this is that she didn't just go to visit Ethiopia. She went to visit Ethiopia with someone very specific, which everyone may be familiar with, Karen Bass. Now, Karen Bass is reasonably interesting for a number of reasons, because everyone remembers Bass was also the same L.A. mayor that was in Ghana during the time of the L.A. fires, and when people were wondering what the hell she was doing there. Well, it turns out Karen Bass is very involved in a number of different things, and she was on the Senate, or she was in the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, and, she was very involved in this. But more importantly than even that, okay, she was involved not just in the House Foreign Affairs Committee. She was also involved with another group that's reasonably important to this, and that is the National Endowment for Democracy. Now, for those who don't know what this organization is, I'm going to put this up here so people can see this. Essentially, the National Endowment for Democracy, this group is one of the stupid NGOs that has been trying to funnel democracy to the third world for a number of years. Now, as you are all aware at this point, or anybody who watches this show and watches what we talk about, may be aware that, we have attempted to install democracy in many different places, and we've had many different versions of that. Lots of them fail, okay? Most of the ways that we try to install democracy, turns out we're not very good at it. We tried to install it at gunpoint with Bush. That didn't really work. Then they tried to install it with, setting up structures, and that didn't really work. And now it appears that the next thing that we started doing was trying to export democracy via, financial means, essentially. Now, the reason this is all important for the Somali cash, okay, So we figured out that Dubai actually has a very large Somali diaspora, which apparently is what we are now believing is the money laundering mechanism for the Somali cash coming out of America. So that started in the 1970s, and apparently it's a very extensive network of people that operate there, which explains why our money moves from Minneapolis to Amsterdam to Dubai. So we've now figured that part out. But it didn't answer what Omar had to do with it until we made this National Endowment for Democracy link. Now, if you can't seem to export democracy via normal means, you can't do it at gunpoint, you can't do it by building empires or building governments and whatnot. What is another way that you think you might do it? Well, the idea behind this, installing democracy around the world thing is built on a flawed mental model that believes that these people, they just want more iPhones or something. If you just give them more money, then they'll actually, eventually develop democracy all on their own. Well, now take that idea and think about it through the terms of pumping cash into Somalia via fraud, via whatever means possible. Well, then there you go. You've got an incentive. You've got an incentive structure for us to create this fraud in the first place. And as everybody was watching the show yesterday, we now know that $700 million was pumped out of that airport in Minneapolis in just a couple of years. And they were pumping this money straight to Dubai. And why were they doing all that? Well, if they're trying to install democracy into the third world, well, then there's a pretty decent way of doing that if you think that the best way you can install democracy is by pumping in extra money and just funneling it all through the door and shoveling it as fast as you possibly can out to Somalia. Well, then there's a pretty good reason. So we think we may have actually figured out that this NGO, the National Endowment for Democracy, which is a congressionally set up organization, by the way, this is something that's through Congress, another NGO set up through Congress, that this is probably a very large incentive structure. So we figured out that if Ilhan Omar and Karen Bass, the reason we say it's in National Endowment for Democracy is Karen Bass is directly involved with the National Endowment for Democracy. This is the main point on this, which is why that trip that she made with Karen Bass to Ethiopia is so important, because that's what Karen Bass was doing on that trip. That she was all doing work for National Endowment for Democracy. Now, direct links between Ilhan Omar and National Endowment for Democracy are a little bit fuzzy. She's not directly involved with that group, but I would say that it's a pretty safe bet that if you've got Ilhan Omar and Karen Bass going to Africa together, that would probably be the number one reason she's doing it. She's part of this group, and that opens us a new question of whether or not Ilhan Omar, which we have now, if anybody's watched this show, I have wondered many times now, why exactly is Ilhan Omar somehow rocketed to the top of political politics in the United States and the left? Where did she come from? Why did she rise so quickly? Well, if she's installed by, say, the intelligence communities that are trying to install democracy in multiple different locations, then you may have an answer. You may have an answer. If you think that that is a possibility, we may actually have an answer for that. So now with this link showing that Omar and Karen Bass were over there, we actually may have figured out the incentive structure on why the fraud was allowed in the first place, why the fraud was overlooked, because we're trying to install democracy in Somalia, everybody. And the best way you can do that is just give them boatloads of cash, and you can just shovel that cash out the door, shovel it straight onto the tarmac of Somalia, and that'll somehow install democracy. This is the stupidity of the mental model that they've created, that democracy is just purchased, that the only thing people care about in other countries is just, being able to buy iPhones and shit. This is a real thing. This is a real mental model that exists. So unfortunately, I think this is part of it. So again, when we're talking about shutting down the NGOs that are destroying America, this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. If this NGO structure is designed specifically and incentivized to commit fraud on the American people so that they can install democracy in another state, well, then there you go. That's the kind of stuff we can't have. That's the kind of stuff we need to avoid. That's the kind of stuff we need to get rid of. This stuff is crazy. This stuff is something that we need to get rid of. And this is just one of the NGOs we're going to talk about tonight, guys, because the other stuff we want to talk about is what's going on with the anti-ICE raids, because we've got some very interesting links for that. Before I do that, I want to make sure I bring in my co-host this evening, Chris Marino, who's joining the show now. What is happening, Chris?
Hey, what's going on, man?
Oh, it's another night in paradise.
So, I find it laughable that Omar is taking NED funds to Somalia to reinstate a democracy in Somalia. Let's recap really quick here Omar's family history. Her tribe was the Marxist dictator of Somalia that was creating genocide on Somaliland.
Yep.
And so the folks that in Somalia, it's a complicated situation, but the folks in Somaliland are begging and pleading and doing all they can to be an ally of President Trump. They want their own sovereignty. They control the Horn of Africa, the most important part of Somalia, to be quite frank. And you're going to have a Marxist, the daughter of a general Marxist, the granddaughter of a shipping Marxist, of a brutal dictator with hundreds of thousands of body counts and lives under his regime that were executed. Heck no. This is a joke. And I can't even believe people don't put these politicians like in government, they don't even put two and two together here.
Well,
History is
that's
very
what's
clear.
crazy. That's what's crazy about it, really. I mean, this when we made this link, and Data Republican and I've been working on this because the question really became is like it's the question was always why Minneapolis? Why? What made sense? And then we were like, well, it turns out Minneapolis is run by pirates, so that makes sense for some side. But then they're just like, well, but what still? That doesn't answer the question. Why are you pumping the money out of Minneapolis? Why is it going over here? Why is it doing that? Well, the Somali diaspora in Dubai is apparently very well established. Very well established. It's been there since the 1970s. So that explains why our money's moving to Dubai. So that explains that aspect of it. But the National Endowment for Democracy link, that really gives us the incentive structure. That explains why the fraud would be overlooked, why they would have incentive to overlook it, why Ilhan Omar became so meteoric rise. It gives us a structure that we can actually think about why this stuff was happening in the first place. So I think that's a good link, and I think that's a solid link so far. And this is just, again, so the other topic that we're going to cover here tonight, Chris, is we have found some very interesting stuff for the anti-ICE raids, which is, again, leading us to more NGOs. No surprise there. No surprise there. And I'm going to get into this real quick because I don't have a whole lot of time this evening, guys. As I was telling everybody when at the open of the show, we're doing a short show this evening. I got to get back to Ohio tomorrow. So I just want to go through some of this stuff. I want to get your take on it, Chris, because this stuff, the anti-ICE raids. So Jack Tron, one of the unofficial producers for this show, he was on last night. He joined a Zoom call and actually sat in on one of these ICE, anti-ICE protest things, okay? And they had gone through it. And if you guys watched Matt Walsh's show when they were talking about Defend the 612, and he went through all of the details of it, it's all the same material. Exact same, different organization. This one was called States at the Core. Now, States at the Core, this little NGO, was pretty interesting because in the midst of this call, which was not recorded and not set up so that anyone could look for contact information, but he screen recorded the whole thing. We have the video. On this call, they mention that they are fiscally created and sponsored by the Hopewell Foundation. Now, the Hopewell Foundation, for those who are not familiar with it, is part of the Arabella Network. The Arabella Network is the dark money network, is how the leftist NGOs fund everything. But the Hopewell Network is very interesting in this scenario because this is the first time I've ever seen a network, a fund, the Hopewell Network is a pretty large fund, directly connected to an actual direct action group. So the States of the Core people are talking about how to protest ICE, how to oppose ICE, how to set up networks to oppose ICE, what to do when you're opposing ICE, how to do it, all that stuff. But the Hopewell Network is one of the big dogs. It's one of the ones that gets money directly from the Ford Foundation, directly from these big other NGOs like the Rockefeller and the Carnegie Institute. It's one of the bigger ones. And further than that, this one has Mark Elias's firm directly on the payroll. Okay? I mean, this group, the woman who runs it, and I'll pull this up on the screen here. So this is about the fund here. Let me put this up here so people can see this. There is, 1 minute here. Yeah, this one. Share this tab here. So let me go ahead and pull open a couple things here from this, because if you go to the Hopewell Found and about the fund and who their president is, Anna Brower here, and let me pull this up and put this on the screen so people can see it. There we go. So Anna Brower here, for those who can't see this, is a little bit difficult to see, but she was previously served as the Deputy Chief of Staff to Attorney General Letitia James. She managed the James transition team for Letitia James. She also worked in the 2020 Biden stuff. But where did she start? Anna worked in the New York City Department of Consumer and Worker Protection and began her career as an advanced associate for the Obama White House. Is anyone surprised? Really? And it's an Obama staffer. It's a direct Obama line to this. Now, this fund, by the way, and this is something that is pissing me off, okay? We have got to go after this, Chris. How are we letting these groups, a group like the Hopewell Foundation, how are we letting these groups remain tax-exempt organizations? How are we doing this? These things should not be tax exempt. They are violating their 501c3 status every single day, and nothing's done about it. Because I want to show you this here, because I've got another page I want to pull up here. This is what their 990 says, okay? So you can read this here for yourself, guys. The 990 here says the Hopewell Foundation is a nonprofit that uses fiscal sponsorship and charitable grant making to support domestic international initiatives aimed at advancing public good and achieving equity for all people. What the hell does that even mean? I mean, it's the most vague description ever, okay? The most vague description ever. They have no real services on it. And if you scroll to the bottom of this 990, which is publicly available, you can go to their website and see it yourself, guys. But if you look at their 990, you go through this thing, all of the groups that it's supporting are all leftist causes. They're all leftist organizations. It's the trans lifeline, the trans this, the trans that, the abortion this, the abortion that. It's obviously all leftist stuff. We need to start enforcing this. We need to start enforcing. If you're a 501c3, you're supposed to not be politically involved. You're not supposed to be politically involved. And that's how it's supposed to work, but it's not how it works. And everybody knows that.
Yeah, well, I mean, so this is all a bunch of vague language to sugarcoat what it's actually doing. If you look at the last sentence there on the screen where it says, and advancing state level economic and democracy reforms. Okay, that straight up says we are going to interfere and undermine any policy in any administration that we don't agree with. That is the quick layman's terms summary of what that really means. And so they're laying on paper what they're going to do. To be real honest with you, I didn't know Jacktron was on that call. I saw his expose that he posted, which, by the way, folks, if you're not following Jacktron or subscribing to Jacktron, he is a brilliant young man, and he's doing great things. And I think he has subscriptions. Make sure you follow Jacktron. I think it's, what is it? Is it Santron now or Santatron?
Yeah, but I mean the ad is the same, so it's at Jacktron Prime, so you'll be able to find it.
I mean, he's doing great work, but here's the crazy thing: is if anybody's paying attention to the administration, and they have that clip and where they talk about the Hopewell Foundation, you have now a direct link, aside from the obvious other evidence, because there's other evidence that links Elias and Norm Eisen and these organizations to the RICO case, right? But at that point, if they're openly saying this is who our funding is, this is who's doing helping us, financing this, that is a direct quote. That is a direct link with Norm Eisen and Mark Elias.
Well, I mean, here's the deal, though. So you keep going down on here. So you want to see here's their law group, right? This is Elias Law Group. There it is. Black and white. This is Hopewell Foundation. Now, this is why I'm talking about this. And by the way, it's $9 million in legal fees. This is the other grift that exists within this stuff, guys. $9 million to the Mark Elias legal firm. This is one of the ways that they funnel their money to their Democrat attack dogs in lawfare, is they give them shitloads of money from these organizations. I mean, the Elias Law Group is a for-profit law group. It's not an NGO. They're a for-profit law group. He has made hundreds of millions of dollars off of setting up these organizations for Democrats. And that's why you see him across all these things.
And that's not on top of the hundreds of millions of dollars the DNC provides to Mark Elias's firm and to coordinate and organize their election day what they call voter integrity units, which is a group of a group of attorneys all over the United States ready to challenge and go to the courthouse and attack and challenge, legally speaking, any effort to curb fraud. If you're requiring voter ID, for example, Mark Elias has his effort that he coordinates. They're going to send attorneys to that precinct and make them not enforcing voter ID in these states where it's not technically mandated. So hits a grift. It's a huge grift. It's like a Rick Wilson and those guys. Their group. I mean, what a huge grift. It pays to be anti-Trump. It pays to feed the monster called TDS and this Marxist monster.
It does. It really does. I mean, the deal is that when you start looking at all this stuff, and especially when you see this, I mean, the state, what is it called? States at the core group. This stuff it's like, you're not even an NGO. You're supported by the Hopewell Foundation, whose vague mission is democracy for equitable people or some horse shit. I mean, this stuff is all a grift, But it's all designed so that they can just funnel money directly from their large philanthropical groups, which is essentially all of the large ones, like Carnegie, Rockefeller, the Soros Open Foundation, all this stuff. And you go look at the Schedule B for this stuff. It's all single issue donors, where it's 50, $60 million for each one of them, and there's like $200 million in this fund. And then you scroll through these other organizations that are part of this. I mean, just take a look here at some of these organizations that it funds, okay? I'll scroll down here and just give you just a brief overview of some of these things, because it's a very, very long list. But I'll go in. So look, here we go. So, this is, oh, by the way, for some reason, they're very active in East Africa and a whole bunch of other places like that as well. But you got to go down to the bottom to be able to see the organizations that they're part of. So here you go. A Better Balance, Preferred Women's Health Center, Women's Choice Greensboro, Abortion Coalition for Telemedicine. I mean, like, how do you get in a telemedicine abortion? I mean, like, this is the craziest stuff. Action for the Climate Emergency. Every single one of these things is a leftist group. Every single one of them is. Voting Vocal. I mean,
the ACLU.
This kind of, yeah. You go through this stuff and you keep going. It's just every single one of these things is some form of leftist group, and they refund them to the tune of a couple $100,000 to a couple $1 million. Black Men Vote, Campaign for Accountability, Care for All. None of this stuff, and this is my point again. My point again is that we keep living in this world where these things are supposed to act as 501c3s, where they're not supposed to be politically involved, and they do exactly the opposite. Why aren't we taking the funding? Why are we not? We've got to shut down these NGOs. This is sort of stuff to me is like, this is obvious. This is obvious. This group, the Hopewell Foundation, is run by Obama staffers. It's staffed by people that worked in the Obama White House. The entire board is people that worked for Biden's groups, for Obama's groups, all of this stuff. So to me, we're looking at these organizations, and they're obviously all funding leftist stuff. Obviously. They're funding the destruction of this country. And we need to get rid of it. We've got to shut it down, because why we're letting these things get away with this amount of money, all of these groups are using tax-exempt status. We should be able to tax these groups. I feel like this is fraud. And especially because your goal is so broad and ridiculous. It's so broad and ridiculous. We're funding equity for all peoples in all places. Like, what does it mean? No one knows what that means. And the only reason they write it like that is because it is vague. It is vague, so they can pump it wherever they want. That's the purpose of it. That's why they use such vague language.
Well, it also is compliant with these mega corporations and these foundations requirements when they give the gifts, right? So let's just say let's say Facebook. Let's just put Facebook out here. Let's just say Facebook decides to give the Hopewell Foundation $40 million because it's a 501c3 and they need a write-off, but it has to go towards helping indigenous people or whatever it is, right?
Yep.
That language is very important because that's what qualifies them in the public eye and on paper for that money. Even though you and I both know everybody involved knows the scheme. Everybody involved knows exactly what these organizations are doing.
Exactly. And that's the point. I mean, and this is the point. We all know what's going on here. The problem I have is, why are we shutting it down? Why are we letting this go? We shouldn't be letting this go, okay? Like, we've got a scenario where we know that these organizations are violating their 501c3 status. We know it. We know it because they're funding nothing but politically motivated groups. They're funding, for God's sakes, they're literally funding the ICE protests on the streets right now. They're fomenting and paying for actual physical violence against federal officers. Okay, and we're sitting here allowing this stuff to happen. This sort of stuff should be shut down today. I mean, I don't understand it. I don't grasp it. And the fact that we know that it's happening, and this is, again, the reason the Hopewell Foundation is so crucial here is because this is the closest I've ever seen a fund like this operate with something that's doing direct action. I mean, these people, the states against the states at the core thing, they claim that they're like, we're a resource group or something like that, which is always what they do. They set it up so it's like, oh, they're not really on the ground. But no, they are. I mean, they're telling people what they do on the ground. It's the same stuff that Matt Walsh talked about with the 612 stuff. In fact, it's the same documents. The salute, right? So we remember what Matt Walsh's thing said. It's talking about the salute, how you identify ICE officers, how you're supposed to respond to them. It's the exact same documents. It's the same documents from the same people, from the same funding, and we're just letting it happen. And that's the thing that bothers me so much about this. We know this is illegal. So, what on earth are we doing letting these groups run? We know now that we've got funding for NGOs that are trying to fleece America, using Somali fraud to promote democracy in other countries. We know that we've got other NGOs that are funding actual obstruction of law enforcement in our streets. Minneapolis looks like a freaking war zone right now. Have you guys seen today? Today they're trying to rip down barriers and they're spray painting stuff. They stole firearms from federal officers yesterday and threw them out on the street and it broke open stuff. This is crazy. What are we doing? What are we doing? And that's the thing to me is we're looking at this. If we want to deal with this properly, we need to actually go after the funding, which is what I've been all over. But the deal is, I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the Hopewell Foundation and their mission here. How is this remotely not 501c3? It is 501c3. They're claiming it is. This needs to be shut off. We've got to shut this off. We got to take their tax exempt status. And for God's sakes, if they also want to, if they want to pay for this stuff, fine, let them pay for it. But they can't do it tax exempt. That's what
Yeah,
needs
well,
to
I mean,
happen.
the documents prove themselves. I mean, anybody who doesn't believe that this funding isn't there, I mean, you just literally saw the tax document. Maybe you didn't fill the tax document out. Maybe you weren't sure. But the truth of the matter is they did, and they fill this tax document out so that they don't get their butts audited and taken to the chopper, right? And so the reality is they're funding this. You know what's more disgusting, Walter? What's more disgusting is these people not only broke into these FBI agents' vehicles or federal agents' vehicles. They rip out this deal. Then when they bust it open, they have files of arrest warrants, like actual arrest warrants, the holding stations in Wisconsin. They have where these people are staying, the hotels they're staying, the names of these officers, the personal phone numbers of these officers, and they're now in the hands of Marxist groups that are taking that and they're going with Ice Watch and these other groups. They're taking that. They're going to run everything down. They're going to find their wives, their kids, their neighbors, their family, and they're going to wreck their lives. They're going to be threatened in violent ways. This is going to happen. The guy that is on camera with Nick Sorter's video, for example, openly on camera was saying he's Latin Kings. And so now you have a direct tie from these organizations and cartels. Latin Kings are part of a cartel. They are gangs. They're a violent gang, actually. And so, this is where this is at. Now, I think that resources are being mobilized, right? But what's going to happen between now and then? And so now you have a governor in Minnesota who's encouraging further action, encouraging further
Exactly.
unrest.
I mean, they're inciting violence. They're inciting violence. By the way, we have someone in the chat here that said this isn't true. I just want to share you something here, just for people that are not aware of what we were talking about before. If you're saying any of this is not true, I'm going to put this up on the screen here just so you can see this for yourself. Down here at the bottom, it says states at the core is fiscally sponsored project of the Hopewell Fund. It says it right there. Here, I'll make sure you can see the whole thing. There you go. It is actually sponsored project of the Hopewell Fund. So, in case you just thought we were just like coming up with things out of our ass, they even have it on their website. So it is actually set up that way. And I don't know what this guy's saying. Nick is such a schmuck.
Well, here's the thing.
Oh,
Here's what's going to happen, right? Because
yeah,
obviously, Walter,
go
you're a
ahead.
made man now, right? They know who you were. They ran you down in Oregon. They ran everything about you. Like and obviously Nick Sorter's always kind of most recently always been marked, right? So these people are going to come on to shows and they're going to put all this disinformation out because this is part of their training. This is literally part of their training. I can go to the page of the manual. This is part of their training to online disinformation, engage their bot network, all of these different things. And so what we're seeing is a very sophisticated operation that was designed by Marxist people that openly say they want to reform democracy. What that really means is they oppose capitalism, they oppose individual freedom, they want collectivism, and they want Zohar Mandamiism. They want Ilhan Noor said Marxism because her last name is not Omar. They gave her the name Omar because her tribe name would be directly tied to a Marxist dictator. And so that's the truth. And that's why she's leading the front. And the thing I think I put out there, though, that I think is super important is it is a mistake. It is a mistake to allow third world uprisings in our country when you have communities built around third world people. They will embrace it. This is the life that they were raised in, or at least their grandparents were raised in, and their culture, their tribes were raised in. They have no problem mobbing on people. Okay, and these people will get more savage. They've some of these cultures have seen more death than anybody can imagine. They have no problem bringing that to the streets of the United States. Trust me on that.
Well, and the deal is that to me, looking at all the stuff we've looked at, trying to figure out why the money's moving, how the money's moving, the deal is we know where it's coming from now, okay? And the next level of this is going to be the stuff that they can't ignore, which is what we really want to find, which is going to be figuring out how they actually move it on the ground, which we haven't done yet. That's the next level of this. That's going to be the investigations that we run specifically. But the deal is, to me, the upper levels of this, it seems to me, if the Hopewell Foundation is directly sponsoring ICE projects, I mean, guys, we shut their tax exempt status off. They're literally fomenting obstruction of law enforcement in the streets. How is that not illegal? I mean, they're telling them to do illegal things. They're directly telling them to do illegal things. I mean, it's in their manuals. This is no, we don't want you to do anything illegal, but here's how you do it illegal. I mean, this to me is the stuff we have to stop. We've got to shut these NGOs down. We've got to stop this stuff from doing, and we've got to stop them from even creating intentional fraud so they can promote Somalian cash so that they can save the democracy of, whatever the hell it is. This is nonsense stuff. This is stuff we have to actually get done. And the fact that I'm glad we actually have a new attorney general, assistant attorney general that's going to be looking at fraud, because this is the kind of stuff we absolutely must focus on. We absolutely must focus on it, and this is the stuff that we want to deal with. Someone else is pointing out what you're talking about, the Omar's family with the Somali civil war. Yeah, we talked about this just a minute ago, Zaina. I mean, this is the stuff that we need to get out, though. We need to make sure that this stuff is dealt with. We need to figure it out, because I'm watching this, and I keep looking at all this money. These organizations have hundreds of millions of dollars. It's not going to stop. It's not going to stop if we don't shut it off. If we don't get rid of the tax exempt status and then investigate them for using that tax exempt status fraudulently, then this stuff is just going to continue. I mean, if you've got $60 million in this fund, this fund in 2024, in the 990 that I was looking at, they had $150 million, okay? That money is still there. And they're tied to the Ford Foundation, the Tides Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation, that also have millions upon millions of dollars. That money's not going to stop until you actually figure out how to shut the structure off, which is what we've been saying for weeks. The money must get shut down. The money has to be, and that's where we've got to go with this. Chris, anything else you want to say? I got to get out of here for the evening, guys. I appreciate everyone.
No, I mean, I just think that it's going to get worse the longer this goes on, and I would encourage folks in Minnesota who maybe, I don't even care if they're fans of Donald Trump or not, right? They are fans of their state pride and their state community, and they're not fans of this kind of behavior. And the reality is I'm encouraging everybody to make sure that they take caution, make sure that they protect themselves, make sure they protect their neighbors in the community, and just be vigilant, because this is going to get worse before it gets better. This is going to get worse before it gets better. And so with that, Walter.
And I do wonder, Chris, if this is the final gasp, that they know that things are coming and they're trying to pump it all out there as much as they can. Because, again, as we said weeks ago, the fraud started hitting a fever pitch, and then suddenly all the riots started happening. Magically, riots appear everywhere. And this happens every time we get near their money. Every time we get near the money, somehow there's I'm kind of amazed that this is happening, and this is how I know it's all fun. It's because it's too cold. Okay, it's like people don't usually riot when it's cold out, guys. I don't know if you guys understand that much, but it is genuinely like that. It's cold. People don't want to be in the streets. If you're paying them, though, sure as hell they'll be out there. I mean, it depends how much you're paying them, and I'm thinking that they're probably paying them.
Well, it doesn't need to be that much. I mean, think about this. We're in a gig culture world right now. People don't understand how expensive it is in the Twin Cities, okay? To live anywhere decent in the Twin Cities, it is very expensive. So you have people out there that have Airbnb in their apartment complex, their extra bedroom in their apartment. They're also at the same time door dashing or Uber Eatsing or Ubering themselves or whatever. They're doing gig work, right? And when you do gig work like that, on average, most of these people maybe are making anywhere from 75 to 125 bucks a day. So if you can pay somebody a couple $100, and be out there for,
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
this is what I was looking at, Chris. I was saying if they give them $500 a week, that's probably
yeah, if you're
enough.
getting $500 a week and you get free meals, you get a free place to stay whenever you want, you get,
You
you
get meat
get
and cheese
gas
trays on the
cards
street for
or
Portland.
yeah, you get, prepaid cards for gas. All of these things are standard.
And that's the stuff that I'm talking about when we need to talk about we need to figure out how that money moves because that aspect of it has not been laid out. We understand the top level. We understand where the money really comes from. Okay, we see it. And with this Hopewell Foundation stuff directly tied to this Stack Up group, this is the closest we've seen a large fund to the direct action. That's the reason I was focused on it earlier. I was like, wow, that's interesting that it's so close. It's like usually there's like 5 layers. Like you've got like 6 layers before you get there, but this isn't that far off. It's literally right next to it. I mean, this is direct funding. The Hopewell Foundation is funding this group. It's on their damn website. They talk about it openly. Like that means that there's either something else is going on where they're not allowing them to approve 501c3s where they can just spin up a new one or something like that. But all of this, I'm telling you, something's changing. But the deal is now, I agree with you. It's going to get worse before it gets better. But that's why we need to shut it off now. That's why
Well,
we got
and
to shut it
Walter,
off now.
one
And then
one
we
thing
got.
I did notice on that document when you had it up, and if you could send that to me after the show,
Yeah.
I want to look at it. But there's a couple things I noticed. One was the number of groups in North Carolina that
Oh
are on
yeah.
that
Yeah.
document that are getting heavily funded. Enter Tom Tillis, right? And so
Yeah.
so when you start to see these weak-legged Republicans who have lied to their base forever and are now leaving, you can see exactly why they were weak-legged. And so the truth is, Mark Elias and Norm Eisen have reaches across both party lines. Now, they're obviously diehard Democrats, and they obviously are going to support Democrats and go to war for them, right? But there is also these rhino folks who are swamp creatures who want a life post DC with some consulting firm, lobbying firm, fill in the blank. And,
Yeah.
they don't want to be.
Well, I mean, Chris, this is always the deal, right? And this is the deal. Right? This is what my point is. The fraud and all this stuff, the way this structure works, the reason we're having a problem shutting it down is because it's not just on one side. It's not just on one side. It's on both sides of the aisle. And my point is, we need someone that actually has the spine to shut them off anyway and just do it. We have to. That's our only
Yeah,
choice.
that's correct.
All right, guys. That's the only way we can because these things, like I said at the beginning of the show, they're destroying this country, and they're going to continue to, and they're going to make it way worse before we make it better if we don't shut the funding off as soon as we can. Okay, guys, this is the Political Theater. I'm Walter Kerr. This is Chris Marino. Make sure you guys follow this page on X. If you guys are on X, go to @WC Dispatch. Go to @Chris Marino on X. Make sure you guys subscribe to both of our content, follow our content, turn on notifications. That really does help this show. And guys, we will see you guys tomorrow night. I'll be back in the studio. We'll have a real show, a normal show tomorrow night, and I will be back on the road going over the weekend. We'll probably be back probably Monday. I think I'll have one more show in the studio on Monday, and then we'll be back on the road for a couple more days as we get into next week, guys. So thank you guys for being here. Make sure you guys share the show out, and we'll see you guys next time on the Political Theater. Thanks, guys.